Hello, dear friends. Good evening. Let me just check here the microphone. Yeah, everything seems to be working fine. Hello, guys. So Stevan is not here tonight, so I'm gonna be doing the study of the Spiritist book. Everyone is more than welcome to join, to participate, to share. So we're gonna be here studying from question 371 on the Spirit's book, part 2, the spiritual world, mental disabilities. And we're gonna go until question 378. Okay? I know it said we're gonna go to 384, but we're gonna stay until 378 to close this part here tonight. Let's just give a few moments for friends to come. So let's be here. Okay, let's check here. We have, okay, everything seems to be working fine here on Facebook, also on YouTube. Okay, guys, so we're going to start doing our initial prayer. Let's just check, give one more second here. 10 people, they can join us. Okay, guys, so we're gonna do our initial prayer and then we're going to start doing the studies tonight. So for those of you comfortable, I would like to invite you to close your eyes. To take a deep breath. Let's calm down our minds. Let's concentrate only in the present moment, only in here and now. Let's be thankful for everything that we have. Let's be thankful for those who are surrounding us here and in the spiritual world. Let's be thankful for every moment that we live. Despite the suffering, we are sure that everything here has a reason that we must understand is only good for our spirit. And despite all the difficulties, let's not forget that we have spiritual friends who are supporting us in the spiritual world. Like the friends and family that we have here, they are supporting us. They want us to proceed and to keep going. Thank God, and so be it. May these studies be fruitful to everyone here tonight. Okay, guys. So tonight we're gonna be studying from question 371. As we said, we're gonna be talking about mental disabilities here. So in this part of the Spirit's book, Kardec will ask the spirits the influence that we have on our spirit of physical body, in this case, actually the brain, once the brain is affected. So that's why we are talking about mental disabilities. So what's the influence of these mental disabilities on the spirit and vice versa, on matter and spirit, okay? So here in the question 371, the spirits, they ask, is there any basis for the opinion that the mentally disabled have less evolved souls? So Kardec asks this because in the time of Kardec, and even nowadays, some people who don't believe in reincarnation or who don't believe in anything, in any kind of life after death, that there is something bigger than what we have here. They only believe in matter and the life that we have here right now. Sometimes we may think that someone who has mental disabilities, they are less evolved beings. Once we see the human eyes, materially speaking, yes, they can perceive in this way. But here in Spiritism, we believe in reincarnation. We believe that I have inside of me, inside this physical body, there is a spirit, which in this life is called Vanderlei. But in previous life, maybe called John, maybe called Mary, maybe called whatever name, Ching Chong, doesn't matter which name, and doesn't matter which condition, because the condition which I have right now, it's one, but the conditions which I had before, they were different. Okay? So Kardec is trying to understand here, because in the time of Kardec, this understanding was much more present, that people who are mentally disabled, and also in some cases the physically disabled, they are less, they are less evolved than the others, or they worth less in society. That's why Kardec asks this question. Hi Lu, good evening. So I'm going to read the question again. Is there any basis for the opinion that the mentally disabled have less evolved souls? Okay, and here Kardec replies, no, they have a human soul, frequently more intelligent than you would suppose, and which suffers from the insufficiency of the means to communicate, just as the mute suffer from the ability to speak. So Kardec is saying to us here, no, they have a human soul. So everyone who has mental disabilities, they have one kind of soul, a human soul. But here he says, frequently this soul that perhaps we see, let's say we see a disabled person, a mentally disabled person, he's saying to us, he's going to explain that that person who perhaps is in this mental stage at the moment, in this reincarnation, may have inside of them someone very intelligent and clever, maybe a genius in our way of viewing. So, as he says here, no, they have a human soul frequently more intelligent than you suppose. So sometimes we see these disabled people and we think, this person, they are less than us. Oh, poor of them. Be careful. In that physical body, they may lie a spirit who has much more intelligence than you suppose, as he's saying here. But of course, he's going to explain a little bit more how this intelligence and moral works together. But here, as he says, they have some kind of difficulty to communicate, just as the mute. So just as someone who cannot speak, they have the inability of speak. So Kardec is trying to explain here to us that uh, people with mental disabilities, they could be in a previous life someone very important in society. They could have been someone who were very clever in society. Let's say, for example, imagine if you take a history book now and you see, for example, Chopin, one of the great musicians ever, the greatest pianist, or you take, I don't know, Da Vinci, or you take someone who was very important in politics, such as Julius Caesar. And what Kardec is trying to say to us that sometimes we are maybe seeing here with someone with mental disability who could have been someone in the past who were important in history, as the ones which I mentioned here. So we have to be careful. That's why Kardec will explain to us that this inability is just of the body and not of the soul. But let's keep going here. In question 372, at the same time, guys, if you have any questions, please, you guys can stop at any time and you guys can ask. In question 372, Kardec asks, what's the goal of providence in creating unfortunate beings like the mental disabled? So he's asking, why does God create this kind of people? Why does God create people with mental disabilities? Like nowadays, we have to understand that luckily, or thank God, we have a society who does not treat people with mental disability as if they were people which has no value. Because before, in our previous history, people who with mental disability, they used to be killed. For example, we have in the Second World War, when the Nazis, they used to kill people with mental disability, but not all of them. In many wars before, in many societies, people with mental disability, they were thrown away or they used to be killed because they were like a burden to society. So here Kardec asks, what's the goal? Why does God create people with mental disability? And the spirits reply, the spirits who dwell in the bodies of mental disabled are punished. They suffer from the limitations imposed on them and from the impossibility of expressing themselves through undeveloped or defective organs. So let's read Kardec again. The spirits who dwell in the bodies of mental disabled are being punished. They suffer from the limitations imposed on them and from the impossibility of expressing themselves through undeveloped or defective organs. So, what Kardec is saying to us here that everyone who comes with some kind of mental disability, and I would go even further, anyone who born with any kind of disability, any mental disability, or any physical disability, in previous lives, as we're going to be seeing the text here, they have abused of that faculty which they are lacking in this existence. So let's say you have someone who has a problem to a mental disability, who cannot grasp what's going on surrounding them. Probably they have abused of their intelligence, or as we're going to see later on, could be a case of a suicidal person who shot maybe his head. So once you shoot your head, or let's say if you jump from a bridge, and once you hit the floor and you smack your brains on the floor, you are destroying your brain. So you are destroying in your perispirit, in your spiritual body, that part. So what happens then in the next existence? Because you destroyed this physical, you destroyed your physical body in a previous existence. Your spiritual body is damaged. So Kardec says here that these kind of beings, they are being punished, but punished by what? By actions that they did previously in previous reincarnations. Because God does not punish anyone without any reason. Of course, let me try to rephrase what I said. God does not punish anyone at all, but the law of action and reaction kind of punishes us to bring us back to the law, back to the straight line, we can put in this way. So once we committed a crime, we have to fix this crime. We have to fix this mistake ourselves, and that's no different. Once we are talking about mental disabilities, that's why here the spirits they say that they are being punished. So they suffer the limitations of expressing themselves and with defective organs. So let's say if someone comes in this life, they're gonna be who have destroyed their brain in a previous life, or they have abused a lot of their intelligence. They come with a defective brain. Or let's say someone who perhaps shot themselves in the mouth, they comes with this life with a problems when they're speaking. They have a problems here in the region of their mouth. So everything has some relation. And here, Kardec then keeps going in question 372 in the second part of the question. Then, is it inaccurate to say that organs have no influence on the faculties? So Kardec is asking this because here on question 370, Kardec was talking about this influence of the organs and the spirit and the matter. So matter are the organs, about the organs and the spirit in question 370. And here, the spirits, they say, we have never said that organs have no influence. They exercise a very great influence on the manifestations of the faculties, but they are not their source. So Kardec, the spirits are just repeating themselves as they were saying question 370. So here they say, we never said that the organs they have no influence, they are not important for the spirit. They exercise a great influence in the manifestations of these faculties, such as speaking, such as hearing, such as seeing, such as thinking. Of course, the organs they have a huge influence on that. However, they are not their source. What the spirits are trying to say. If someone is intelligent, then intelligence does not come from the brain, it comes from the spirit. But for that person to exercise in full his intelligence in that life, he has to come with a good brain. with a physical good brain, a brain which can function properly. So if someone comes with a brain which is not functioning properly, that person is correcting themselves from previous actions and from previous reincarnations. I hope that makes sense, guys. Let me come here. And then the spirits, they keep going. A good musician will not make a good music if only a defective instrument is available, but does not mean that the person is not a good musician. So Kardec are trying to, the spirits are trying to say to us that that person who perhaps is born with that problem, that physical problem, is still a good spirit, but has its limitations temporarily in that physical body. That's why he say a good musician, so a good spirit who is clever enough, will not make a good music if only a defective instrument is available. So that spirit who perhaps could be a genius from a previous life, someone very clever, cannot exercise in full his potentials because he's been given a body with limitations. But he's still a good spirit. So he's still a good musician, like he says here. Does that make sense, guys? I hope it does. And here we have a comment from Kardec. A distinction must be made between the normal and the pathological states. In the normal state, mental ability may overcome difficulties posed by matter. There are cases, however, where the matter offers such a challenge to that manifestations are distorted or completely blocked, as it's the case with mental impairment and insanity. So Kardec is trying to say, is trying to make a comment from the spirit's reply. So he says here, we have to separate, we have to make a distinction here that the normal, a person who is in normal state, perhaps he has the ability to overcome uh, um, problems imposed by matter. Let me give an example. Let's say you are born with certain difficulty to learn maths, for example. You are still born with a good brain. You are still born with all your faculties, but perhaps it's difficult to learn maths. But if you try to overcome with goodwill and practice, you're going to be able to learn that skill. You're going to be able to master that skill. But that's a normal person like us. I mean, most of us, we have some difficult in certain areas, but if we work hard and if we study and if we practice, we are able to overcome these difficulties. But here he says, is that there are cases, however, There are cases, however, where matter offers such a challenge that manifestations are distorted or completely blocked, as in the case of mental impairment and insanity. So he's talking about the cases with people who are born with several mental diseases. We're not talking about depression here. We are talking about someone who has like a problem. That person has mental difficulties. That person cannot understand what's going on. That person cannot be responsible for their acts in most of the time. There are pathological cases in such states that the soul is not in full possession of its faculties, which is why human law exempts people in these conditions from their responsibility for their actions. So, these people with mental disabilities, who have a proper mental disabilities, they are not able to exercise their faculties. So, let's give an example. Let's say if in a previous life you're a general or you're a musician, for example. Let's say you're a musician and you were able to orchestrate 300 musicians on your orchestra. But maybe if you are born with mental disability in this life, you still a good maestro, a good musician. However, your faculties are temporarily blocked, so you're not able to access your faculties. Why? Because your body, your brain, your organ is a damaged one. Why are you having this damaged organ, as we have said here before? To fix yourself with the law of action and reaction. So here, using the words of the spirits, we are being punished. So we have these temporary disabilities. That's what the spirits are trying. That's what Kardec is trying to say with the spirits here. Then in question 373, what could possibly be the purpose of the existence of beings like mental impaired, who can do neither good or evil, therefore cannot progress? Look how clever Kardec is. The question of Kardec is, what could be possibly the purpose of the existence of beings like the mental who are mentally impaired, who cannot do good or evil? So why God make these beings? But I mean, these beings, they cannot progress. They cannot do good. They cannot do evil. But Kardec is just asking here. Once we are using the human eyes, he's talking about us here. He's not talking about the spirit itself in the spiritual world. He's talking about the person who has the mental disability right now. What's the purpose of this person if they cannot progress? And the spirits, they reply, it's an expiation imposed on them for having previously abused in certain faculties. It's a temporary pause. So that's what we are saying. So it's an expiation to that spirit because they have before in their previous existence they have abused their faculties. So it's just a temporary pause. Why the spirits they are saying this? And let's keep reading here, then I'm going to explain. Therefore, may the body of a mentally impaired person confine a spirit who perhaps animated a man of a genius in a previous existence? So that's the question. And the spirits they say, yes, a genius can sometimes be a curse when one abuses it. So here, as we were saying before, using the example of the musician, we have in history, for example, for those who are Brazilian, we have a very interesting case about Santos Dumont, the father of aviation, the one who created the airplane. This Brazilian genius, we can put it this way, he killed himself after he saw that his airplane, which was in his mind, the proposal for creating the airplane was to connect people. Okay, and then he killed himself. I think he hanged himself in Paris, if I'm not mistaken. And because after he starts to see the airplanes being used in war, so he was really disappointed with humankind. Chico Xavier, in a beautiful case, explains to us that there was one day, a certain day, that a man brought to Chico a young boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old. And she said, Chico, I cannot understand what's going on. This is my son. He fell off something like, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 centimeters. He fell off from the sofa, which was higher, maybe 50 or 60 centimeters. He fell down the floor. And then doctors are saying that it's impossible to anyone to break their spine and become, how you call the term, when someone become someone who cannot walk anymore in their life. So this young boy fell down from, as we said, a height which was very short, and there was no way, according to doctors, that he could have become physically impaired to be walking and moving his arms again. And she was asking that to Chico so many times, asking Chico. She went there several times. Then she started to become part of the spirits group that Chico Xavier was part. And one night, Emmanuel said to her, tell her this story. Tell her who her son really is. And in the end of the night, she called his mom and said, hey, Emmanuel told me to say something to you. Can you see your young boy here, 4 or 5? Lovely boy who cannot walk anymore. I feel pity for him. But Chico said, in front of you, you have the greatest, one of the greatest genius of Brazil, Santos Dumont, the man who created the airplane. and he has this problem. He once he was born, even if he was born physically normal with no problems, Chico Xavier was explaining that he killed himself in a previous life, as we know about Santos Dumont. And this area of his neck and his spine was very, very weak. So even though he was born normal with the full physical faculties, he had this weak spot that anything could hurt and damage him. That's why once he fall down, he becomes this paraplegic. I think the word paraplegic when someone cannot walk and move their arms. And Chico said to her, "He's gonna die probably soon, but he's fixing himself with the law of action and reaction." The boy, as far as I'm aware, he was mentally okay. He had no mental issues. And of course, he didn't remember that he was Santos Dumont. But in this case, we are talking about someone who had a physical problem. But we have many cases, for example, in the case of the memoirs of a suicide, when the Portuguese writer Camilo Castelo Branco shot himself in the head. And once he was born, after he described how was his life after he killed himself, shooting off his brain. He was explaining that in the next lives he came with mental disabilities. What we are trying to say is here: once we come according to the spirits, and that's not a cakey recipe. What I'm trying to say is like this: it's not because this happened that that's gonna happen. No, please don't understand myself like this. But in most of the case, when someone is born with a mental disability or a physical disability, they are being, as the spirits are using the words here, they are being punished. They are passing through an expiation in order to fix something from previous life. That's why here the spirits are trying to explain to Kardec that, in fact, even if that's happening, that's just a temporary issue. So that once the spirit passes away, when that person goes back to the spiritual world, the spirit will be free again, will be normal again. Because the spirit, in fact, is normal. And we're going to be seeing here. But I've heard about history, some stories of people who had a family who had a mental disabilities. And sometimes they had a medium in their family. And there was a curious case when someone said that that person who had a mental disability, once she was sleeping, that medium could see her in the spiritual world, and she said to that guy, uh, "You think she's mentally disabled, and she's so stupid that she cannot understand anything that you say. Perhaps she cannot show you that she understands what you say and what you feel, but in the spiritual world, she's aware 100% of everything that you say to her, and vice versa." So be aware that her spirit is still working perfectly in the spiritual world. So that was something which a medium told me about someone. And here we can read that through that happens in the spiritual world. And here Kardec, as he says here, therefore, may the body of mentally impaired person confine a spirit who perhaps animated a man of a genius in previous existence. So Kardec is saying to us that physical body or a body with mental issue, mental problems could have been someone very clever in a previous life, as we said. And here we have a comment from Kardec. Moral perfection is not necessarily achieved in lockstep with intellectual advancement, and the greatest man of genius may have much to expiate. So, moral perfection, it's not talking about the physical body here. Of course, in order to us to achieve moral perfection, we need to exist, we need to live, we need the physical body. That's why we need matter to improve ourselves. That's why, in the level of existence that we are, we need the physical body, we need the reincarnation in order to be able to face matter, in order to live in this world. Then we can progress our moral faculties. So then he says here to us, hence they may have often have an existence that is inferior to the one they have previously lived, which represents a cause of great suffering for them. So Once you have someone who has a mental problem or a physical problem, but let's concentrate on the mental disabilities here. That person, that spirit, is aware that he was a genius before in the previous life, for example, or he was someone very clever, and now he's in that body where he cannot speak properly, he cannot express his faculties properly, you know. So that represents to the spirit a very great suffering. The Kardec is trying to explain here the predicaments that these spirits experience when they try to express themselves are for them like chains that restrain the movements of a robust man. So once that spirit is trying to express themselves with these mental disabilities, it's like if the spirit it's held up, it's restrained by chains because that spirit is strong enough. That spirit is very clever, but that spirit cannot express who he really is. One could say that mental disabled have an impairment in their brain, and those who limp have an impairment in their legs, and the blind an impairment in their eyes. So here Kardec is trying to explain to us what we have said before, that someone perhaps who have a problem, a physical body in their legs, for example, maybe by some reason they have hurt their legs in a previous life, or maybe someone who has maybe a heart problem in this life, probably have hurt their hearts. You know, when some people they used to shoot themselves in the heart, like our previous president Getúlio Vargas, who shot himself with a bullet in his heart. I don't know where if he has or not reincarnated at all. I have no clue. As far as I'm aware, no one ever said about Getúlio Vargas, but we can imagine that because he shot himself in his heart, in his next reincarnation, probably he will have a problem in his heart. Cannot say, I cannot kind of grasp which kind of problem, but he hurted his spirit in the area of heart. That's what the Kardec is trying to say here to us. Let me And then Kardec keeps asking, in the spirit state, are the mental disabled aware of their mental condition? That's what I was saying before. Kardec is asking, once the spirit is here, has a physical body with mental disability, is he aware of his mental condition once he is in the spiritual world? That's what Kardec is asking here. That's what I explained about that situation of the medium who was talking about someone that he knew. Yes, very often. Yes, and very often. They understand that the chains hampering their development are a trial and an expiation. That brings us up again about that case I was saying. So that woman with that mental disability, once she was sleeping, she could see herself out of her body. She knew that she was in that situation. That wasn't something that she enjoyed at all, because the spirit doesn't enjoy that. The spirit, sometimes suffers, and for him, is um, is a great challenge. But as he says here, but the spirit is 100% aware that he's passing through a trial and an expiation. So the person with mental disability, once they're out of their physical body, let's say once they're sleeping, because Kardec explains to us that each one of us, once we are sleeping in our dreams, will leave our physical body. We sometimes go to spiritual places. I mean, not sometimes, all the time, we can say. And once these spirits they go out of their physical body, they are aware of what's going through, what's happening with them. They are aware and they know. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, the spirit is the one who chose to be passing to that trial and expiation, because the spirit is aware of what he did. And once he comes to the spiritual world, he wants to fix that quick. So what does he say? What does the spirit ask to his mentors, the spirits who are looking after the reincarnatory process? They say, hey, I have done this and that. Please allow me to come with mental disability. And the spirits say to them, are you aware that you're going to be suffering Imagine if you come with mental disability 500 years ago, how life would be difficult. If now is difficult, imagine before. The spirits are trying to say to them, are you aware? And the spirit is aware of the difficulties, but the spirit wants to pass that really quick. So they say, give me this challenge because I will win this challenge to try to bring my spirit back to the law of action and reaction, to bring myself equal, in the eyes of God, not equal. What I've been trying to say is, I'm going to try to recover what I did. That's why here they say to us that the spirit is 100% aware. That's a trial and is an expiation. And here in question 375, what's the situation of the spirit in the case of insanity? Let me come here. So what's the case of the spirit in the case of insanity? Let's see what the spirits they reply. When freed from the body, the spirit receives impressions directly and directly exert his action upon matter. Once incarnated, however, he finds himself in a completely different conditions and needs to act with the help of special organs. So, what the Kardec, the spirits are saying to us here, one is like, let's read again because it's not so, it's a bit complex. When freed from from the body, the spirits receive impressions directly and direct exerts his actions upon matter. Once incarnated, however, he finds himself in a completely conditions and needs to act with the help of special organs. So once the spirit is aware of what he did in the spiritual world, once he comes to reincarnate, he needs to, in order to him to exist in that existence, he's gonna need some help of the organs, of special organs. In this case, he says here, which is partially compromised, as he says here. If these organs are partially or entirely compromised, the spirit's actions are disrupted. If the eyes are injured, he becomes blind. If the ears are hurt, he becomes deaf, and so forth and so on. That's what we explained about this, the perispirit. That's what we explained about this perispirit or spiritual body. Once we hurt ourselves in our physical body in this reincarnation, let's say if I go here now, if I shoot my head, probably in the next reincarnation I'm gonna have a similar problem with my brain because my spiritual body or my perispirit is affected. That's why here he says, that these organs they're gonna be partially disrupted. We're gonna have organs where we affected which are damaged. And here, let me see. Now, if the organ presiding Okay. Now, if the organ presiding over the manifestations of intelligence and will is partially or entirely hurt or compromised, you can easily understand that the use of such impaired organ will result in a disorder of which the spirit is fully aware, but on sense of which is unable to prevent. That's what we were saying about the brain once the brain is damaged. So the spirit understands that he's going to have this issue, this impossibility of fully exercising his faculties because the organ is going to be damaged because of a previous action, unable to um, unable to exercise everything that he must or that he wants. Then Kardec keeps asking question 375. Then is it always the body and not the spirit which is defective? And the spirits they reply, yes, but you must remember that just as a spirit acts upon matter, matter reacts upon the spirit to a certain degree. So Kardec asks, okay, so from your question, spirits, then is the body and not the spirit that is effective? Because we have to understand that once someone comes with a mental disability or a physical disability, it's not the spirit itself. Yes, we have the perispirit affected, but what is going to be affected here in this life that he's going to perceive is the physical body. Even if his perispirit is affected. But here Kardec is talking about the spirit, which comes before the perispirit, okay? But as he says here, we must remember that spirit acts upon matter, and matter reacts upon the spirit to a certain degree. So, if that a physical perispirit or spiritual body is affected, it's going to have a certain level of, it's going to affect the physical body and vice versa. To a certain degree, of course, because the spirit affected matters the most. Therefore, a spirit may find himself temporarily affected by the disruption of his organs, through which he manifests and receives his impressions. That it may happen that it may happen that with time and after insanity has taken hold for a long time, the repetition of the same behavior patterns end up exerting on the spirit an influence which will not be able to free until he is completely liberated from the material impression. The spirits are sent to us, let's say, someone with a mental disability who cannot exercise, as we said, in full his faculties. He starts to create some behavioral action, he starts to create some behavioral patterns here, which will exert a certain level of influence in his being overall. Okay? But this, once the spirit is discarnated, this influence of the pattern is going to be marked in the spirit. The spirit will have that on that, and the spirit will still gonna have to clear his spirit from that kind of pattern that he created, from actions that he was doing because of the temporarily paused faculties that he had. I hope that makes sense, guys, because here Kardec is quite complex. The spirits are quite complex sometimes. And then we come to a part what we were saying before about suicide, which if you study here would be only 1 hour, 2 or 3, 4 hours, 10 hours, only talking about suicide, which is a very complex and deep subject, which many spirits, such as André Luiz, Emmanuel, Camilo Castelo Branco, in the book Memoirs of a Suicide by the medium Ivan do Amaral Pereira. Many of them, they talk about the consequence of suicide. But here, we're going to be just talking, just let's say, a quarter and a quarter and a quarter of 1% about suicide here. But here, in question 376, why does insanity sometimes lead to suicide? So why does sometimes insanity leads to suicide? We see many cases of people who with mental problems who kill themselves, who suffers, for example, of very strong schizophrenia, who suffers deeply with these mental issues, who end up killing themselves. So Kardec is asked why this insanity sometimes can lead to suicide. And the spirits reply, a spirit suffers immensely from the limitations he endured and from the powerlessness to feel it to manifest himself. He then seeks in death a means of breaking the ties that binding him to the body. So imagine, guys, we have here a case. Imagine someone in a previous life who had power, an immense power over people. Let's say a general, an emperor, who perhaps was able to control and everything, all his will be done because people used to fear him. Then, by some reason, the same spirit is born with mental disability. Imagine that spirit once he sleeps and he's aware of who he was before. He's aware of the faculties that he has as a spirit. He knows how clever and powerful he is. But his moral is very weak. That's why he's in that condition. Because if he was some spirit who was who was highly evolved morally speaking, he wouldn't be suffering that condition. That's why here in the beginning of this part, the spirits, they say to us that the spirits are being punished, but high evolved spirits, they are not punished. So whoever is expiating has something to fix it, has something to improve. They have a trial to pass on. They have the punishment to receive. So here, um, this general, for example, once he comes to in this life and he's aware of who he was in dreams, for example, sometimes that person wakes up and that person starts to get worse and worse. And one day we find out that that person killed themselves because the spirit he's suffering so much because of these limitations that he wants to be free from that condition. He wants to be free from that body which has that physical and mental limitation. That's why suicide happens. But in this case, Eduardo Amaral Pereira explains to us beautifully that that spirit is going to be in a bigger, bigger trouble because that spirit is born with that mental disability or physical disability in order to fix something. Then, in that case, he goes there and kills himself. Then he's gonna have more burden to be fixed, more burden to carry in the next lives. Chico Xavier explains to us with Emmanuel that in some cases we have spirits who are reincarnated with mental disabilities over 5 or 10 reincarnations straight. Then Chico asks Emmanuel, why Emmanuel that happened with that being? Why does that spirit he is born with mental disability over and over again? And Emmanuel explains that sometimes in that case, sorry, we are talking about case of someone who has mental and physical disabilities. Emmanuel was talking about a case of someone who could only blink, and that person had some mental disability, but his physical disability was even bigger. He could only blink. And Chico asks, why is this spirit only being able to reincarnate like this for over 10 reincarnations? And Emmanuel replies to him, Chico, this spirit, if he could move one arm, he would kill himself. So sometimes spirituality gives this kind of reincarnations throughout so many times to the same spirit because the spirit is still very rebel. The spirit doesn't not want to pass in that expiation. He doesn't not want to stay there. So if he had the chance, he would kill himself. Of course, that case was a very rare case, according to Chico. Was about someone who was very meaning in the previous life for sure. But yeah, so case like this could happen. That's why sometimes spirituality finds the only way to stop that spirit committing suicide. That because that spirit has created that pattern that maybe he has committed suicide many times. The spirit says, okay, let's put this one in a impaired physical body or in a mental with mental disabilities also to stop the spirit of killing himself. But here in question 377, Kardec asks, after that, does the spirit of a mental disabled man still free, no, still feel sorry, the regiment after death? Does the spirit of a mentally disabled man still feel the derangement of his faculties? And the spirits reply, they may feel it for some time until it's completely disengaged from matter, like a man who upon waking still feels the confusion into which a sleep has plunged to him. So he's asking if someone who is with this mental disability, once he passes away, once he wakes up in the spiritual world, will they be still with mental disability? And as it says here, the spirit may feel it for some time still, because it's like if you are waking up, you don't wake up ready to go and ready to run a marathon. We wake up, we still a bit sleep, we need some coffee, we need some water, we need to see the sun sometimes once we have. We need some time to fully wake. And that's the same case what happens with the spirit. The spirit needs some time, and each case is one case, okay? And then in question 378, how is it possible for an impairment of the brain to affect the spirit after death? It's the memory effect. So let's go back. So Kardec basically is asking, how come someone who had a mental problem in a previous life, and that mental problem was because he came with a faulty brain, with a damaged brain, how come does that person still feeling that after death? And the spirits they reply, it's a memory effect. It's like a ballast waning. So it's like a memory, okay, a strong memory. Because Kardec used this translation, use this kind of difficult words here. So it's like a deep memory upon the spirit. And since he's not conscious of everything that took place during his insanity, the spirit requires a certain amount of time to get abreast of the facts. So the spirit wakes, the spirit still feel that he still wakes with that mental disability, you know. So needs some times until he's aware of the facts, until he's aware of the life that he just passed, you know. That's why the longer the insanity lasts during his corporal life, the longer his stress and constrictions will last after death. Disengaged from the body, the spirit continues to feel the impression of this link for a while. So the spirits are saying, let's say if you are born and if you passed away once you are 8 years old, 5 years old, because you were living that life for such long with that mental disability, you may feel for a while because you were on matter, you were incarnated, and for yourself that was reality. So it may take a bit longer, you know, for you to fully wake in the spiritual world and be fully aware of what was happening and of your situation. Okay, guys, so here we're going to stop here on question 378. Next week, we're going to be talking about item 6 on childhood. So, Kardec, the spirits will be explaining to Kardec a little bit about childhood. But what we have to understand here, guys, from this part, which is very, very dense, that no one is born with mental disabilities or physical disability for no reason. God does not choose, okay, I'm going to give Vanderlei a mental disability. He's going to be born with a brain who he cannot understand what's going on around. He cannot do any maths. He cannot do anything. He cannot grasp reality entirely at all. God does not do that on purpose or because he just wants. No. Once we fail in the law, once we commit a mistake, we must repair ourselves. We must fix ourselves. So, like the spirits are trying to explain to us, all these kind of situations, they are trials and expiations which the spirit is suffering because he caused that. He made something previously, now he has to deal with the consequence of his actions. He has to deal with the results of his action. And what I find about about beautiful about this is how God is so merciful. Because for some religions, we have hell. We have hell. So if I committed a crime, if I do anything crazy, if I abuse of my talents in a previous life, I go to hell forever. Here, no. In Spiritism, the spirits they explain to us that yes, you're gonna have to fix what you did, because what you did it's quite severe. You're gonna have a difficult next reincarnation, but if you wait patiently, if you expiate with resilience, this will pass. And once this pass, you're gonna overcome what you suffered. So the spirits are giving to us another chance. They are not mean. They are not being mean with us. God's not giving this challenge to us to hurt ourselves. I say this, guys, and I believe I know a lot about this because I have someone very dear in my family who has mental disabilities, and for me it was very difficult to understand how come that person has this problem and how that person was very mean with me and my siblings. And for me, it was very hard. It was very difficult for me forgive that person because I know that person has mental disability. Because of this mental disability, that person hurted so many people. That's my mom. She has mental problems. So the only way which I could understand a little bit about this was with Spiritism. That's why when I talk about Spiritism, I tend to have passion because it's the only philosophy which brought me some explanation, which said to me, Wanderlei, yes, your mom has this, but she's a spirit who perhaps committed some crimes before. But now God is so merciful and so good that she's gonna be your mom. You're gonna have 7 siblings, 8 in total, and you're gonna be able to have a next life. You're gonna have to be able to have an opportunity in this life. And I see the mercy of God there because I could feel that. I could see that in myself. For so many years, I hated God because why did He give that to me? But if I was born in this situation, perhaps I did something with her also. It's not because God just wants to give me a mother with mental disability who was very aggressive once we were kids. God does not give that to people just by chance. If you are in that family, you have some spiritual connections, and that nowadays, almost 40, now I understand. Now I'm able to forgive for everything that she did. That's when I see someone with mental disability on the street, I normally I tend to say a prayer inside myself, and I say to that spirit, "Be brave, my friend. Be brave, because that will pass." When I see someone with a physical difficult, I say the same prayer. Be brave, my friend. Be brave, because that will pass. And you're gonna be able to win in the end. You're gonna be a soldier who perhaps was in a difficult battle, but now you're gonna win. Because God is good and God is merciful. That's why I believe this part here, at least for myself, is very special. But let's see here. Have Leah saying, absolute fascinating talk. Great for the clear explanations of our spirit's answers. You have a gift, Vanille. Thanks, Leah, but I don't. But I like to speak. Yeah, I'm glad that you like that I shared, and I'm glad that you like. Um, we have here also our friend Herminio. I believe Herminio is in Brazil. Good morning, Kardec Radio. So I guess it's morning. Maybe he's in America. So guys, thank you very much for being here with us tonight, and I hope this speech was enlightening to everyone. If I was able to at least explain a little bit about this situation that some people they suffer to you guys, then my job was done. I'm quite happy if I was able to do this. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your presence here. And just to let you know, guys, we have some announcements that we do all the time. Okay. So for those who are missing the healing, we have our virtual healing every Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Uh, at Tuesday at 7:15, we have our Tuesday talk. Then after that, 15 minutes after, we have this healing which start at 8:30, and you just have to go to our YouTube channel. And once you go to our YouTube channel, the workers they're gonna be, saying a prayer and give that virtual healing to everyone. Also, for those who enjoy to study the Spirit's book, we have our Spiritist book studies, which is every Wednesday. But this one is not done via YouTube. This one is done via Zoom. So you guys have to send an email to us to at spiritismisland at gmail.com, and then someone will send to you the Zoom link, and then you guys can participate. Okay. So for our friends here in Ireland, we are gonna be back on September. We don't have the dates yet properly, but it's going to be beginning of September to have our presential meetings. We don't have much details yet, but once we have, we're going to be sharing that on Facebook, and we're going to be sharing here also. Let's see if there is anything else. Uh, yep, that's it, guys. Let me just take this message away. There we are. Okay, guys. So we're gonna close our section tonight with a final prayer. So again, I'd like to invite everyone who feel comfortable to close their eyes, to take a deep breath. Let's raise our thoughts to our Master Jesus, our great doctor, the great physician of the souls. Let's ask to our Master and to the good spirits to keep watching and giving strength to those incarnated who are with these mental disabilities or physical disabilities. Spirits who are paused for some time, who are not able to act in fully exercising their faculties. I know their suffering is great, is great, is big, is difficult for them. I know that. But we have to remember that the good spirits are watching them, that Jesus said to us that he would be with us until the end of time, that he will be supporting each one of us in our challenges. So these brothers and sisters, they have their mentors, they have the good spirits who are supporting them. Let's say a special prayer to the suicidals who left this world too soon. Let's bring our good thoughts to those brothers and sisters who are thinking about suicide. We wish that they open their hearts and their spirit in order to hear their mentors, to stop thinking about committing this crime, which will hurt them much more in the future. We hope that the good spirits are able to support them. So let's send to them all the love and vibration, because we know that suicidal thoughts sometimes they come to us in a very subtle way and grow in our heart. So may the good spirits be able to clean that thoughts in our friends, in those ones who are thinking about it. May God bless all of us. Thanks God for this life, and so be it. Okay, guys. Thank you, Lou. I'm glad you like. I hope I was able to bring some nice thoughts. I'm glad you enjoy, guys. Have a good night, guys. See you next Tuesday. Bye bye.